What's going on? Welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. I'm trying this background thing today, as if I'm on the little island in Islands of Adventure, having a great sunset view of SkyCoaster behind me. It's very exciting.
It's a better view than mine. I'm looking back at mine, and I haven't organized it in a while. But yeah, better than a bookshelf. I'll give it that. I was just too lazy. I didn't feel like taking it down to the our room in the basement. So no, just a little lazy today. So it is what it is.
So
Clee, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. My first thought though today is to ask you're a Bengals fan, right?
Yes, I was a closet Bengals fan for a while, and thank goodness we've been well out in the open for a few years now.
Okay, it's good time to be out in the open as a Bengals fan. How do you feel about the contract free agency situation? You got a franchise tag on T. Higgins. You re-signed Mike Gesicki. Do you think there's going to be room in the budget for Jamar Chase?
There better be. I mean, I honestly, I don't know how you. Well, I don't know how they would feel that they would be competitive with without that tandem between Burrow and Chase.
Yeah, it could
when they're in sync, it's a magical thing on the field. I don't know how you're going to be realistic that they don't have somebody that can back up Chase just yet. Not that they couldn't.
That's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. We'll see. It's an exciting time to be, paying attention, watching the league jumble up.
Yeah. So the question is, for you down in Orlando, when is Orlando going to get some major league sports? I know you got the NBA, but you don't have football and you don't have baseball.
Yeah, especially baseball. Well, we need a baseball team down here. So the Rays we're looking to move. Listen up, I'm telling you, Orlando, Florida, it's a great place. But we do have a great basketball team, and not to mention we have two great soccer teams. The Orlando City FC, pretty good. But the Orlando Pride, the LWLS team, is the national champions this year. Won the women's soccer highest, championship you can win. So professional sports, just we need baseball is what I'm thinking.
You do, yeah. It'd be good weather down there for football too, because about October, it'd be terrible to play football in August in Florida or Orlando, but in October, November, December, that'd be great weather to go watch a football game in.
Yeah, definitely would. I would be there for sure. All right, well, I think it's about time to get into our pick six for this week. Great segment where we pick
We've got some good ones this week
in the theme park industry and tell you about some news. Let me start us off this time around. I'm a cast member at Walt Disney World. I'm not speaking on behalf of the company in any way, but as a fan of the Walt Disney World, I have to say I'm very excited for Monsters, Inc. The ride technology was kind of shown to us from Walt Disney Imagineering. Whoa. So if you've seen Monsters, Inc., you've got the doors, flying in to provide the portals for the scarers to go in and do the scaring. Well, those doors ride on this pretty cool looking track and go throughout the whole Monsters Incorporated facility. And that is exactly what the ride is going to be in the new Monsters, Inc. land in Hollywood Studios. Whoa. I'm pretty excited. What do you think, David?
The article that we brought up was from the Orlando Sentinel. It should be in our comments section for anyone to post on who hasn't seen it already. But was this planned, or did this leak just come out? Because it is if you've seen the movie and where they're riding the doors, I believe it's the first one. It's like you're going to be into the Monsters University factory.
I think it was like an announcement, and sometimes the announcements will come in the form of a little bit of like mysticism, but I think this is just Disney trying to keep people excited. And I think if you are Disney, there's some level of, it's an exciting time in the industry, and Epic Universe is here and all these things. And so they want to keep people reminded that, hey, we're doing some really amazing stuff too.
I am kind of sad that that will mean the downfall of the Muppets attraction at Hollywood Studios.
Muppets 3D.
Muppets 3D.
Yeah,
which
that's
has
a
been
great
playing the
ride.
same program since I was in there in spring break in college. It's a great ride. A lot of places it's I guess it's run its course, but still it'd be sad to see it go.
But of course,
Looking
the
forward to the Monsters
Muppets.
ride, but
Yeah, and the Muppets intellectual property is going to live on in Rock and Roller Coaster. That is going to be
okay. Now,
reimagined
as
for
an
the Muppets.
Aerosmith fan, I'm disappointed about that too.
Yeah.
Although when we rode the Rock and Roller Coaster back in December, I think it was, I got to tell you, that band has not aged in 20 years
Okay.
because you had that. Well, no, you had the same interplay of the video going into the
Yeah.
ride. Literally, it's I don't know when it was filmed, but they haven't changed it in a long time. So I tell you what, as I get older, I would love to age just like those guys have.
Yeah, they're looking great for their age. Great.
They are. All right, we got pick six, number 2. Carowinds on the East Coast opens up this Saturday for the new season on March 15th. Cleet, you got your ear to the ground on a lot of things. What do you think about the new stuff coming to Carowinds this season?
Well, I think it's very exciting. Carowinds has been one of the parks getting a lot of attention from, Cedar Fair, and I think that will continue into the Six Flags, overhead. And they've added in a new water park expansion not that long ago. And of course, Carowinds, a lot of people are sad to know that they're losing a few rides. Their drop tower is closing, a couple of other flat rides are going to be closing for this year. But to me, that's super exciting because I will lose a couple of rides that had lower ridership any day because it means somebody's thinking about what's coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's always a good thing to hear.
Yeah, if the track record holds up that has come the last year or two with the new Six Flags, a lot of the new attractions that are coming, they are really get into a lot better storytelling, which we'll get into a little bit about immersive experiences here later in the show, but with our guest. But at the same time, the kind of attention that the new attraction is getting in Canada's Wonderland as well as King's Dominion, very excited to see what's going to happen for not necessarily just Carowinds, but the rest of the park organization in the coming years because
For
they're really starting,
sure.
I believe, starting to tell better stories.
Yeah, and not to mention, they've been kind of going down this path a little bit. If you think back to 2019, Carowinds opened up Copperhead Strike. That's a very well themed ride when you compare it to something like Fury 325 that opened up, a few years before it.
Mm-hmm.
And Yukon Striker at Canada's Wonderland is a pretty well themed ride, but they're definitely taking the next step down that path, which I think is a really smart decision. Next up on the pick six this week, Holiday World, Santa Claus, Indiana. Maybe wins the award, among other things, for just the best name of any city in the theme park industry. But they have purchased, fittingly, Santa's Cabins just down the road. It is called Santa's Cottages Resort, and they've acquired that, now offering them the opportunity to incorporate it with theme park tickets, incorporate it with Splash and Safari tickets, with transportation methods between Santa's Cottage and Holiday World and Splash and Safari. Gives them a whole new realm of places that they can provide great guest
Mm-hmm.
experience, but also make some money. It'll be interesting to see to me. They're a seasonal park for sure. They're not going to be open in your Januaries and Februaries. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with the resort side of things. Will the resort stay open and maybe have like some other kind of fun things for families to do? I don't know.
And definitely, this is a foreshadowing because, of course, Matthew Eckert is going to be on next week. If I'm not mistaken, this is their first foray into the hospitality space. It's been a number of years since I've been to Holiday World. I think last time I was there, either before pandemic or right after the pandemic. I don't recall, but and I'm not familiar with the Santa's Villages. Is that what it's called?
Santa's
Cottages.
Cottages.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. We didn't stay there, but it'll be very interesting to see how they try to improve the property, how they try to theme it, what kind of tiebacks it has from the park, and it's a very interesting and aggressive way for their brand to grow.
Yeah. So they have been working with Santa's Cottages and Santa's Lodge and some of the other little hotels in the past. And you can go on their website and they, lodging, these are the places we have like kind of a
Right.
partnership with. The other thing that I think is so great about Holiday World, and so many agree from, the Midwest and coaster fans all over, they are a hospitality style theme park. Like you get there and the parking is free and the sunscreen and the soda is free, and they want to make you feel like you're a part of their family and you're coming there to celebrate the holidays with them. And it's not this big, kind of more, I don't know, corporate feeling park, which is cool and great and awesome too, but it's a different thing. And I think Holiday World taking that brand that they've done so well with and just been so successful into a hospitality cottages, lodging type thing could be a huge home run for them.
I agree. Anytime they get into that space, gives a whole new palette of colors to paint with. So
Yeah.
looking forward to it, and in getting our next trip there, which hopefully will be sometime early this summer, but I'm not 100% certain when that'll be. We have one of our daughters is into a bunch of different things, and we literally from June until August we have 2 weeks, so we can plan something. So everything's going to be packed into those 2 weeks.
I like it.
Joys of having teenagers. And pick six, number 4, we have the Ocana Water Park in Oklahoma City had their grand opening. Officially, they opened on March 6th. It is a $400 million development that has come up with an 11-story resort. It features 400 rooms. It is the Oklahoma's largest indoor water park. That's 404 rooms. That's a pretty big location, and I don't believe that there's no theme parks of any size at Oklahoma City. Is that correct?
Well, there is, of course, Frontier City, the Six Flags owned park. Not a tremendously large park, but it is has an aero shuttle loop called Diamondback. It's a nice little park.
Okay. I know the Six Flags parks names, and I'm always sometimes have a little bit of brain fog as to exactly what community they're in, because there are a lot of Six Flags parks. How many are there now?
33, 30 something. It's right in there,
33.
I guess. Yeah.
So I got a pinpoint on the map where all of them are. So if we have anybody in the Oklahoma City that happens to listen, sorry about that. But yeah, this is a brand new indoor water park facility that just opened, and really going to bolster the water park tourism and the theme park tourism for the Oklahoma City area.
And I'm sure there's some gnarly days in terms of heat in Oklahoma City, and
Yes,
this will be a great way to beat that, because not only are you in the water, but you're inside. How about that?
84 degrees year round.
Oof. I don't know if I can take it. Speaking of year round, this year Dollywood is celebrating their 40th anniversary, going to be a year-long celebration, as it should be, because this is so wonderful. And, they've said in 2025, we are celebrating 40 years of, this is how they put it, fulfilling Dolly Parton's dream of honoring the place of the people who shaped her, honoring that community, which is so wonderful. And I'm really excited to see. You can always know there's going to be some new food options. There's going to be, maybe a parade or a fireworks show. But what I'm excited to see is Dollywood is beautiful. It's a beautiful park. They have amazing floral work going around in like topiaries and so forth. I'm excited to see the way the landscape changes and some undoubtedly wonderful new sites that they're going to add in for this year to celebrate 40 years of fulfilling Dolly Parton's legacy.
And the whole area down there is just amazing. It's got the whole, just a resort feel off to the beaten path of Pigeon Forge. you almost, if you're going to Pigeon Forge for all the things down the strip and even Gatlinburg, if you didn't know Dollywood was there, you might even miss it because it's a bit off to the side, and there's not a lot of signage. And mostly, I think they're counting on people that are going there. They know where they're going, so but it's a very was there a couple of years ago, and just a beautiful park and a beautiful
Yeah.
resort area, and very. It's almost two separate trips. If you're going to Pigeon Forge, you want to be there for Pigeon Forge. If you're going to Dollywood, you're going to be there for Dollywood.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. And, they're both good trips. You had some great alpine coasters in Pigeon Forge, but Lightning Rod,
Yes.
Thunderation, Big Bear, Wildwood Grove, the whole new area. Can't miss Dollywood.
I can almost imagine you've done them all.
I have done every alpine coaster in yes. And if I had to tell you, because it's the natural follow-up, the best one is Rail Runner at Anakista. It's easy,
Okay.
cleans house in terms of the alpine rides down there.
And we make it down there every couple of years, and we were just down there last spring, and so I'm not sure if we'll make it down there this year or not. But that area is just a beautiful place to go. I've said before that I'd love to just go down, get into a cabin, unplug, and just find a tree and stare at it for a couple hours.
Yeah. Yes.
And then, but there's so much to do down there that rarely happens.
Just gonna note, eventually you're staring at that tree. You got to be careful. You might have a bear coming up behind you. You need to keep the head on a swivel sometimes.
Yeah. All right. So we got pick six, number 6. And Cleet, this is going to involve you a little bit. I need a little input on you. Tornado warnings. If you were in Orlando, I believe it was Monday morning, pretty much the entire resort area from Disney to Fun Spot to SeaWorld to Universal and all the water parks and other attractions in between, everything was under the gun of a tornado warning. And though I believe that there's only one tornado and it hit fairly further north of everything, up in the Sanford area, I believe, which, by the way, there was a great video of the Fox News station there that had, I guess, the tornado was hitting as they were broadcasting. But just the entire Orlando area was under tornado warning. You've worked at Kings Island, Cedar Fair. You've been with Disney now. What are the protocols they have in place when there is a tornado warning?
So at Kings Island, let's go back there first, and the way things were handled was very, with great detail. We wanted to make sure that, everyone was going to be safe no matter what. Of course we did. And the main way that was done was through a system of tornado safe buildings. So the Fest House at Kings Island is a tornado safe building.
Now, when you say that, what does that mean?
It means it has like approval from the state of Ohio to withstand tornadoes up to, some really severe kind of once in a very rare extreme tornadoes. But these are buildings that can take the wind. They're buildings that you may lose power. Maybe they have a backup generation, power generator or something like that. But at the end of the day, you can be in them and feel safe during a storm. So I was at Kings Island one day during, tornado warning, and I was operating the Invertigo, of course, and we had a tornado. The closest tornado safety places to me there were the Fest House, and then there's a kind of a bunker underneath Congo Falls, believe it or not, and down there it's a tornado safe as well. It's like underground, but the top of it is like those graters you see over like subways in downtown cities.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be safe from all the wind and storms and lightning, but you will get wet because there's nothing there to stop that rain. So we tried to, if you have enough time, you always go to Fest House when you can. And it was, just the sort of thing where, okay, now we're just going to try to move all the guests with us. They'll play an announcement over the loudspeaker. And once we're in the Fest House, we'll just try to talk to everybody and make sure they know that they're okay where they are. Then this Monday, I was working at Epcot, and I wake up, I was working late that night and I knew I was. So I slept in a little bit, maybe woke up at 10:30 or something. And it was crazy. I mean, I looked out of my window and it was windy and dark clouds everywhere.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, uh-oh, what's this going to be like? Of course, when I ended up getting to work, there was not a cloud in the sky. It was a beautiful day, how it goes down here. But the protocols are extremely well thought out, well tested, well proven for the Orlando parks and their tornado or hurricane, of course, down here protocols. So obviously Magic Kingdom has the utilidor. If they needed to use that, that is 100% going to be able to withstand anything. And then just like with Kings Island, these parks, Universal and Disney, they have other buildings that are built with that in mind. With there might be times when we need to get all of these guests inside to somewhere that will be completely safe for them. And then, of course, the parks want to be safe and they want to tell people, hey, maybe there is going to be a hurricane today. We're not going to be open. That's certainly a thing we saw
Hmm.
this fall with Hurricane Milton. They don't like to do that, but they will do it if they have to.
And there's a difference between a hurricane and a tornado. Parks have, in a hurricane scenario, they have a couple days, sometimes a week to prepare for it. But it could veer off course and hit them directly, and by the time a hurricane gets into Orlando, it's not as lethal as it is on the coast. But a tornado you kind of assume there's always a chance that there could be one pop up during the day, but it definitely comes out of nowhere. And I remember a couple years ago, our family was on the monorail headed to Epcot, and I'd never seen a tornado before in person. I'd never seen a funnel cloud, an active funnel cloud. And we are getting ready to get off at Epcot, and I'm looking out the window of the monorail and looking up, and I said, I've never seen a funnel cloud, but that sure looks like one. What I could imagine it looking like. We get out, and of course, everybody's got their phones sticking up in the air, pointing to the sky. I'm like, okay, we need to find somewhere to go. And but
Yeah.
but of course, by that time, the funnel cloud had already passed, and we were out of danger. But we're still scrambling, trying to figure out where we can go, even though the danger had already passed.
Yeah, of course. And
But
just to state this explicitly to anyone who's listening, if you're ever in a situation like this and you're at a park and you are like, I don't feel safe because of the weather, um, ask the closest person who works at the park. They will know what to do. They will tell you where to go. And that is just the standard of safety set in theme parks. For sure. So if you're at Universal, ask a team member, and if you're at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, ask a team member. You'll get some.
it was back in 22, I think. I don't remember what year it was, but we flew down to do a weekend trip to the Disney parks, and my wife is always, should we pack the ponchos? I'm like, I looked at the radar, or I'm sorry, not the radar, but the forecast. There's nothing in the forecast. We're not going to. They take up a lot of real estate in the luggage. Let's just leave them home. So we're down in at Disney Springs, and we're eating at a restaurant. I think it was a Rainforest Cafe, and I get an alert on my phone, and I just read. I'm like, okay, do you want to shoot me now or later? And she said, what? And if whatever year it was, I think it was Hurricane Sandy, maybe what became
2012, I
Hurricane
think, was
Sandy.
Hurricane Sandy. Yeah.
Oh, not. I'm sorry. I never mind. It wasn't. If it wasn't that long ago, this is just a couple years ago. So I got the name of the hurricane wrong.
Okay.
But it had just formed over the Bahamas, and it was going to sweep through the Central Florida area on its way up north. And and so we, of course, go to Magic Kingdom in the morning. Beautiful blue sky, not a cloud in the sky. Just an immaculate morning. By noon, lots of clouds. By 2 o'clock, nothing but rain and moderate wind. I mean, it was a horrible day. It wasn't bad enough for them to close the park, but literally nothing. I'm pretty sure it probably rained 5 inches of rain in the span of 2 hours. It was just
Florida, man.
nothing but a torrential downpour. But yeah, that was my foray going into a theme park in a hurricane, even though it was early hurricane. It's closest I ever want to be to one.
Yeah. Well, weather is so interesting, I think, in parks too, because of, and this is kind of rabbit holing into admittedly a less severe form of weather. But let's talk about just that rain aspect. And when you're at Kings Island and it rains, lots of people go home because lots of the guests
Mhm.
are season pass holders that can come whenever they
Right.
want, or they're locals who, maybe they come a few times a year anyway. They've been before. They don't really want to deal with the rain. It's a great time to be there. If the rides can stay open a little bit or they can open back up after the rain, all right, now we're dealing with some low crowds and some low wait times. But when you're at a place like Disney, when you're at a place like Magic Kingdom or no doubt Islands of Adventure and it rains, it's a little bit harder for the
Yeah.
people that have been saving up for a long time to afford this
You're in it for the long
amazing
haul.
trip. Yeah. You can't just bail. So it's there are certainly people that leave because there are locals and so forth, and there are
Mhm.
maybe cast members at Magic Kingdom that are like, I don't want to deal with this, but it's a noticeably less drop off from the rain, a lot more dedication coming in at these parks down here.
All right. Well, Clee, our first guest, or I guess our only guest today, is had a fascination with all things theme parks from a really young age. I think you could probably relate to him a little bit on that. He's originally from Long Island, New York, and I'm sure that in our conversation we'll get to what led him to Cincinnati and how he came here to the home of Skyline, the Reds, and the Bengals. But he started his career in themed entertainment in 1998. He's worked on operations from the supplier side and on operations for parks. In roles ranging from operations itself to project management and business development. And he's worked on development and installations of over 50 attractions around the world. Which would be an interesting conversation to find out what's the furthest that he's done installation on. But anyway, he is a partner in a company in Cincinnati called 3DX Scenic. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, guys. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're so happy
Yeah.
you are here. Yes. So why don't we get it started, and you just tell us a little bit about your background in the industry and as a person who loves the industry.
Sure. It's one of these things that I think all three of us, let's say, at a very young age, knew we had a deep interest or fascination with all things amusement parks, theme parks, which today we call themed entertainment under one umbrella. So a very young age, I'm from Valley Stream, New York, which is just east of the Queens, Nassau County line. And my grandparents in the late 70s brought me to a small kiddie park called Nunley's, which was on Sunrise Highway in Baldwin. So anyone familiar with Long Island, it was one of those mom and pop mid-century kiddie parks that dotted the landscape all across America post World War II. Sadly, most of those are gone now. So that's where I kind of got my passion when they put me on. There was an old Stein and Goldstein carousel there that operated in Brooklyn and then moved out to Long Island. Today is still operational in Museum Row in Nassau County, in the Uniondale area, in East Meadow, Uniondale, right by the Roosevelt Field Mall. So it's great that the carousel somehow the county bought it and is still operating it to this day. And then, so I did the college thing with a psychology degree, did the BA, went through it all the while, really trying to focus on how can I get into the industry. And the thing about living on Long Island, which was interesting, is the population is very dense. But when you think about major parks, Six Flags Great Adventure was the closest major park to me. And that was with traffic 2.5 hours. So that's not really a sustainable commute, whether for seasonal hourly work or a full-time career. So my senior year of college, I worked with the career advisors and just sent my resume out everywhere and got a response back from Michigan's Adventure in Muskegon. And this was back when the Jordan family still owned the park. So it was several years before Cedar Fair bought the park. And they invited me out to become a team lead, which is sort of like in charge of one area of the park. So doing breaks and scheduling and park services and operation. And dating myself, this is back when smoking was totally allowed in the park. So there was the tongs and bucket for an hour and a half after close under Shivering Timber Station, all those things that, people who work today, I guess it's sort of the equivalent of, I didn't have shoes in those days, but, it was fun. Met a lot of people, went through, the whole summer, open Shivering Timbers. That was its opening year. And then I moved back to New York, and I found Zamperla. They're North American sales and service offices in Parsippany, about 30 miles west of New York City, and applied for a sales job there and got it. And so I was there for 7 years, traveling around generally the Midwest and some of the West Coast, selling to carnivals and family-owned parks, and doing the trade shows like Gibsonton, which is the carnival, the IISF, which still runs today in Tampa. It just happened a few weeks ago. And then, of course, IAPA Expo in November every year. And then after 7 years of that, I was living in Clifton, New Jersey, down to Baltimore, and I joined the team at Ride Entertainment. And Ride Entertainment is a multifaceted group that services the industry in many ways. They have a ride sales division, so they represent groups like Gerstlauer and Funtime and Metal Bow. So they've got kind of like all different genres of rides covered. So they represent different types of rides, can put a full package together. Then they also have a ride installation division, a revenue share division, where they'll go to a park and say install a slingshot on a revenue share because it's an upcharge ride. They also own SkyCoaster, which we could talk about more later, that I ran for several years. And then they have an operations division. So they operate the Sea Glass Carousel in New York and Fantasy Forest at the Flushing Meadow Carousel. So kind of a little everything. And then COVID hit, and everything got, especially down big your area, the woods in Orlando, everything shut down. And I feel like so many people's careers were pivoted, whether by plan or not by plan. And I found 3DX Scenic through the IAPA job board and applied for a sales job and came out here and grew the external business because 3DX is doing a lot of live event projects, so sets and whatnot. And then 3 years later, in December of 2023, became co-owner of the company when the opportunity presented itself. So it's really, a lot of the story is, you follow your passion, have integrity, work hard, and good things will happen. Not everything goes according to plan. It's important to have a plan, but also important to know that you have to be able to pivot and adjust when the plan isn't going exactly the way you had it mapped out.
So, I love that. So Mark, since you did invoke the name of Michigan's Adventure, not to veer off into a Cedar Fair Six Flags topic, but if you're a betting person, and maybe you are, maybe you aren't, Michigan's Adventure, does it stay with Six Flags or is it spun off?
That's an interesting question, David. I think if you ask most people, they immediately put the smallest parks in the portfolio as being most likely to go, like the Great Escapes, Michigan's Adventure, let's say Valley Fair. I look at it market to market, right? And Michigan's Adventure has always been as far as I'm aware, has always performed strong. It's a small park, so its overhead is smaller. Its operating costs are less. They don't have to do the numbers that a Cedar Point or Six Flags Great America does. So I don't know the answer to that. I would like to think it's going to stay because I think it's a nice little piece in their puzzle, and it gives them the state of Michigan, which bridges the gap between Great America and Cedar Point.
Okay,
that's a great
Just
point.
Curious, since everything's coming up at the news came out a week or two ago that they were thinking about closing or spinning off parks, and I thought, get an opinion. Which ones? I think everybody can make a pretty well reasoned opinion as to which parks stay, but I think it's those fringe parks that a lot of people are. I don't know if it's going to stay or not, and the management probably doesn't even know yet. But I just want to catch your take on that.
Yeah, I think it's as much a financial thing to me as it is a geographical thing. You look at areas that have multiple parks that share the same market, and I think that's where the discussion probably is going to happen because, do you want to cannibalize your own park in the same market type thing? So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I will say, for what it's worth, Michigan's Adventure, it's not necessarily a destination park aside from Shivering Timbers for coaster people, but it has a really, really good team there. Camille is still the GM, and her dad founded the park. And they've got a really strong mix of attractions. It's balanced between water and dry. So I feel like they're kind of set up for success, regardless of if it's a cold summer or a hot summer. And it's pretty reliable. So, I would vote to keep it, if it was my decision. Obviously it's not. But.
And it seems like, although it's certainly not a destination park, in the region of Michigan, it's definitely pulling from more than just the immediate, say, hour driving radius than around the park. Whereas maybe, a park like Carowinds is not pulling from southern South Carolina, whereas I think Michigan's Adventure pulls from all parts and maybe even the UP of Michigan.
Yeah. No, and that whole area, the Grand Haven area of Michigan, just south of Muskegon, that's actually a vacation destination. And most people don't realize that. There's a lot of people with vacation homes, and there's a lot of, quirky mid-century motels and that kind of thing. So the market has potential, and it's pretty reliable. And again, it's not a park. I think the park opens in mid to late May and closes in early October or late September. So it's a pretty manageable schedule.
So you also mentioned selling for Zamperla, the coaster manufacturer that is built more than any other. Are there any specific maybe projects for Zamperla that you were memorable as far as the selling process?
Yeah, I would say, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and the market, Zamperla has grown in so many ways since I was there. When I was part of the team, we were pretty close to split 50-50 between sales to carnivals and showmen and parks, because the flat rides, if you think back, the Power Surge, that when the disco was introduced, the rocking tug, like those are big rides. And we used to go to that Gibtown trade show, and we'd have anywhere from 4 to 9 or 10 actual rides operating at that show. It's an outdoor exhibition. And, the goal was to sell them all. So as far as memorable, I would say towards the end of my tenure there, I did the Grand Exposition project at Silver Dollar City. If you guys are familiar with that, it was the year after Dollywood did their county fair. And at Silver Dollar City, they essentially built this in an old, I think it was a staff parking lot. So when it initially went in, it didn't have the greenery that the rest of the park has. It's a very mature park with the trees and the landscaping and all. So it took a good 5 to 6 years, but I visited the park last year, and it's matured beautifully, and still has the 10 flat rides. And it's sort of that almost like World's Fair exposition feel from the 1880s, of that 1880s story the park carries throughout the property. And that was really fun because we got to basically tour the country with members of the park team and show them, like we went to Knoebels, here's the flying carousel. We went, I can't remember, so Jersey Shore Park to ride a disco. And, it was really fun to kind of do that exploratory thing with them. And we put the ride mix together. They were very specific. We don't want to have any 2 rides that do the same thing. We want to make it so that a guest is motivated to want to ride all 10 attractions in this area. So that was really fun.
And that's a beautiful area too. So definitely a successful due diligence to be done.
For sure.
And so, Mark, you worked with the supplier side, the same Perlo that did the attractions, selling to the parks and the carnivals, but also some of those rides or attractions go into parks, they get themed around them. Before I go into that question, really, because that feeds into what 3DX Scenic does, give a little bit of a background of what the company does. And I want to follow up a little bit with how you interact with the theming, with doing the design work and the installation to bring a story to life with whatever attraction comes in. But give us a little background on what 3DX Scenic does.
Sure. Well, a quick history. 3DX Scenic was formed in 1999, and it was formed by a gentleman named Mike Iacano here in Cincinnati. And he owned a live event production company. So he wanted to have his own internal scene shop that supported the live events. It did all the set builds and whatnot. So as it goes, opportunities came up for 3DX to grow into the themed entertainment world. So there were 2 buckets of projects. One were internal live event projects, and then the other were external projects, which were for the theme parks. And we were able to take those on at the same time. So fast forward then to 2018, and both Iacano Productions, which had 3DX as part of it, were sold to Live Technologies, which is a very large live event production company based in Columbus. And a year and a half later, I joined the team. So 3DX still served as that in-house scene shop, but they were aggressively trying to grow into the themed entertainment world. And so I would say, besides doing some, sets and show design for SeaWorld parks, the big break came when the Sesame Street Street Party Parade was being basically, they had an older parade, and they were they were designing this new parade, and 3DX came in. They awarded one float to 10. All 10 floats went to different shops for the parade that was in Langhorne at the Sesame Place Park. And based on that, they came back to 3DX and said, okay, we have 3 parades, full parades. We're going to do these floats at. We're going to do them at SeaWorld Orlando, San Antonio, and San Diego. All 3 were awarded to 3DX. So all of a sudden, hit the ground running. And I would say it was by 2019, all 3 parades were up and operational. And that led to more work. It eventually led to the rebranding of Aquatica at Sesame Place, San Diego, when that the whole park went from the Aquatica Park that you see in Orlando, or the park that's at San Antonio, converted into a West Coast version of that. So we went in there and we did the neighborhood facades, and we did character scopes, signage, you name it. The whole park got rebranded. So to kind of go back to that, what 3DX really is, we're a bunch of problem solvers. We pride ourselves on doing the heavy lifting that other people either cannot do or don't have the bandwidth to do. So we take people's visions and we bring them to reality through the means of transparency, integrity, and collaboration. That's our mission statement. That's our hallmark. And that's what we do internally amongst our team. And that's what we do between our team and our clients. The number one thing we strive for is there to be no surprises. The end product is what was promised, was what was designed, is what was understood as being the scope. That is what we deliver. And that's what we pride ourselves on. And as you guys know, in any business, everything is about networking. It's about relationships, and it's about, being transparent and delivering on what you say you're going to do. So in our shop, we have what we'll call white glove treatment. We can kind of do a turnkey here. We've got a full fabrication shop with metal and wood capabilities. We have what we call our CNC village, where we've got flatbed routers. We have a 7-axis KUKA robot. We have a full Scenic paint shop. And then we've got a composites department. And in composites, we can shoot fiberglass. We also have a polyurethane hard coat system. So we can take 3-dimensional models, program our robot, cut a bun of foam into that sculpt shape. It could be a character sculpt. It could be a sign. It could be what have you. And then depending on the mission, we could coat it with fiberglass, or we can create molds, and we could do multiples of something. If, certain theme park companies want to roll something out to multiple properties, we could do that. So really, it's soup to nuts, turnkey through collaboration and the other hallmarks I discussed.
So when you're talking about theming, when a park or a zoo or whatever the client may be comes to you and says, we have this concept, and maybe they're just coming to you with the concept for a ride, and they want you to come up with a story for it, or they come at you with a story. A lot of the theming that goes around that is really just, icing on top of the cake. It's not necessarily something that develops the ROI. The experience of the ride is what develops the ROI for the ride. But at the same time, there's something to be said about theming that tells a story. So what's your preference to do on that? And are there any big projects that you've done or been part of where you came in and or 3DX got the 3DX? Do you prefer 3DX or 3DX Scenic?
Either or is fine.
Or does it matter? Okay. All right. So, but somebody comes to you and you just ask the question, what if? And then you take a small project and it just grows and keeps growing by keep asking what if each mark. And then you go from having just a roller coaster to a themed coaster to now you have a coaster that tells a story.
Yeah, those are all great questions, David. And one of the big arguments I always, well, not necessarily an argument, but point that I make is that while theming itself doesn't have a direct ROI, there is what I call an indirect ROI. So if you have something like the giant carousel horses that we did for Palace Entertainment that sit at the entrance of Kennywood and Lake Compounce, you have to think about how many hundreds, if not thousands, of guests, families, groups have their photo taken with that element that then has the park logo positioned wisely right behind it. And those are social media shares. So there's value in so many ways that, a traditional financial CFO person, let's say from 80s and 90s, that may not understand the value of that. They're looking at, I'm buying a coaster, it needs to drive the gate by this much, and that's how we're going to gauge success. So there's a lot more to it. And I'm I'm encouraged with where the industry is going, because a lot more of the marketing people are getting into senior roles rather than finance people or operations people. It's kind of like everyone is having their opinion brought to the table. But bigger picture is that I'll use Holiday World as an example. They came to us in I believe it was mid 2023, may have been early 2023. And we started talking about their Good Gravy project that opened this past season, which was a brilliant ride, an amazing area. If you guys haven't been, you need to visit. But they had a glaring hole in their ride lineup. If you think about it, they had a kiddie coaster in Holodog's Fun Town with a 36-inch height requirement, but it's a Zamperla family coaster. It's a good ride, but it's not something that an average adult is going to feel comfortable riding. Not that they can't fit on it. It just doesn't optically look right. It's like, why is this adult riding this coaster? And so they have this gap from that to the Raven, which on paper doesn't look like a big ride. It's got an 85 or 86 foot first drop. It's 2,800 feet long. It goes 55 miles an hour. But anyone that has ridden that ride knows it's balls to the wall, intense. And yes, it's a family thrill ride. But, I always look at, what is that first coaster? What is the coaster you want to introduce your kid to thrill rides on? And I would think the Raven might turn them off, because they're going to ride that and say, well, there's no way I'm ever going to ride a Legend or Voyage. So what Good Gravy does is it presents that, I call it a Big Thunder ride. It's that perfect entry-level accomplishment coaster too. Like, riding a coaster is an accomplishment mentally and physically. You get over the hump of saying, hey, I rode that thing. That was super smooth. That was super re-rideable. I'm going to ride it 10 more times. Now I'm ready to step up. And Holiday World had that hole in their lineup. They had grown the water park and invested in that wisely because they needed that, and that's their bread and butter. But now they're shifting back to the dry park. So they came to us with this story, said, we've got the concept. Vekoma said they could do this wild design on a train, which if you guys haven't seen, you actually ride in gravy boats, which is hysterical and amazing at the same time. Nowhere else in the world you could do that. And they did an amazing queue. They took over the Pilgrim's Plunge, Jurassica building, and you're walking through a mid-century home where grandma and grandpa live. It's amazing for a family-owned regional park. But they wanted to plus the area. They wanted to give the area, which they coined Stuffing Springs. So it's not just a coaster in a big open plot. So the idea came, let's do some sculpts. So we did an exploratory with them with a third-party creative group that we work with. And we came up with, I believe it was 9 or 10 different ideas. And from those, they picked the 5 they liked the best, which is what is actually on site right now. And you see there, the stuffing box, which pays homage to the founder of Stovetop Stuffing, which I didn't know the recipe was created near Holiday World. You have this whisk that people can walk inside for really cool photo ops. You've got the chicken timer. You've got a milk bottle. You got a rolling pin. So that was super. Going back to the collaboration with the client, I mean, that was just super fun. And the result was super successful. The project was delivered on time. Everyone was satisfied. And when you go to the park now, you see the result of good planning and good partnership. Nothing on that was rushed. Everything was done properly from construction and design, everything. So that led to this year, which I guess it hasn't been officially announced, but I know that the team has been making announcements at Roller Coaster Enthusiast off-season events. So we are doing replacement portals for Holiday World. And those are going to be replacing the 3 portals they have in the park now that kind of sit on the border of Halloween, Christmas, and 4th of July. So I can't show you what they're going to look like, but I can promise you they're going to be wow moments, and they will have lighting integrated, and they're really going to pop. And Holiday World isn't a moment of growth right now. They're expanding their hours, their days. They just announced today the acquisition of Santa's cottages, just 3 miles down the road, which is fantastic because now they're going to have their own lodging. So yeah, and that's an example. So the collaboration and success of one project can lead to the next. And just to kind of close that, the indirect ROI on immersive theming can't be understated. It's you're in an area, and to me, yes, the ride itself is the experience, but the best themed experiences are full experiences. From when you step in the queue line to when you exit the ride vehicle and go through the exit shop or exit, you have experienced the whole thing. And if everything connects, that's when you have success.
When you're talking about the theming experience that they have done and just the incredible job that's all been done there, question I have is that when they first came to present what they wanted to do based on the details that they said they wanted at the time, how many times that changed to what they ended up getting, which I think is just a tremendous presentation.
Well,
but I'm just curious where to start at.
Not a ton. Yeah, David, not a ton. I
Okay.
mean, we presented them with 10 concepts, and they essentially selected 5, and I think we may have had a few notes on those from a creative design standpoint. And then it was really off to the races. It's different. I'm not going to say better, worse. I'll just use the word different as a diplomat when you are working with a park that has family ownership, because you're working with the decision maker. You're not working with the person putting a budget together who then has to present it to someone who has to present it to someone. That could take a little bit more time. And there's a reason for all that, because the big park groups have multiple, properties, and they have to make sure that, everything's harmonized, and you want to make sure the branding is across the parks is there. But, it's important that, there's an understanding. You never want a bad surprise, when something shows up and it's not what they was intended or any of that. So that's what we strive to never have are those surprises. And with working with Holiday World, it's just, they're just the best partners to have.
So in terms of, you've worked with obviously United Parks, and some of the things you've done over there have been very based around intellectual properties, right? The Sesame Place, you're working with existing characters that are beloved to many. What are the differences and maybe like the pros and cons from your perspective of trying to create an immersive experience that's based around things people already are familiar with versus creating something brand new, like with Good Gravy?
Yeah, I mean, there are, like you're saying, there are pros and cons either way. The IP piece is, and we don't, it's more complex because you have the IP owner that you work with in addition to the operator, which in this case would be United Parks if we're talking about Sesame Workshop. So there's more layers of approval, I think. But once you go through that process 1 or 2 times, you get muscle memory, and it's not necessarily harder. It just takes longer. You're waiting on approvals to move to the next step, while you have a looming a due date that you're trying to hit. For a water park, it's usually Memorial Day weekend. For a ride park, it could be April, May, spring break, what have you. So it just, I think with the IP projects, communication is always important, but it gets ratcheted up one more notch, because you really have to push for answers and just make sure, and we'll do like virtual meetings where we'll walk through the shop with the, stakeholders, and if we can't have in person, just to kind of keep them updated on, hey, this is where we're at. And oftentimes it's our paint department wanting approval to clear coat. We can't clear coat till we get approval on the colors and the final look of an element. So the organic ones, those typically come from, most of the park groups have in-house creative groups that put that together. So that's more a discussion of like baseline things, like, is the element going to be indoors or outdoors? How long does it need to last? Is it for a seasonal activation? Is it part of an attraction that's going to be there for 30 years? Are guests going to be able to touch it or rub against it? That will then guide us towards, this should be from fiberglass, or it could be polyurethane hard coat. So those are the kind of things, we work through. With IP, we don't have any creative liberties. We have to deliver what the IP owner says it is. So with that sets us on a path of, okay, we know what the materials are we're going to use, because there is no, meat in the middle on how this is going to look. Cookie Monster has to look like Cookie Monster. So it's really one of those. But both ways are, fun, and we have, both fun and full of anxiety and stress, like every project. But we're accustomed to working either way.
So with the new installations coming this year, and there are some installations that are coming, a couple from Dominion, King's Dominion, and up in Canada's Wonderland, that they're very anticipated roller coasters, have some decent theming around them. Are there any ones in particular that you're looking forward to this year? And beyond 2025 and on to 2026, where do you see the theming trends from an immersive standpoint going?
Yeah, I'd certainly say Alpenfury at Canada's Wonderland really caught my eye. It kind of checks every box for me. You know, I like rides that are diverse, and one of my favorite coasters in the world is Helix at Leesburg. And why is it one of my favorites? It doesn't do any single thing the best, but it is just a complete ride. It checks every box from when you board to when you hit the brakes. It has inversions, airtime, speed, launches, everything. So Alpine Fury kind of, to me, it speaks to me in that same way. I love how it's integrated with the mountain. I love how it interacts with at least 2 other rides, Guardian Mountains, the Guardian, Wonder Mountains Guardian, I think it's called, and Vortex, the suspended coaster. It's just going to create this like insane amount of kinetics in that area of the park when you have these rides all kind of flying around one another. And I don't know that the theming on this is really just that it's blasting through the mountain. I don't know that there's going to be a ton of immersive theming that I've seen yet. Rapterra, on the other hand, at King's Dominion, kind of being one of the last pieces of the Jungle Expedition area, which is, it, you know, Cedar Fair's credit, or Six Flags now, their credit. I mean, they did a really masterful job with storytelling in this area that used to just be the safari area. I guess it's where their safari monorail boarded from. And all of the attractions there that they've been putting in all pay homage to different animals or spirits that are in that area. So I did see that they were installing some of the thematic archways that are going to kind of span over the launch track. And when you have a wing coaster with such wide trains, I feel like the near miss elements are the thing you need to get on a wing coaster for it to be, you know, memorable for me. You know, it's like all the really good wing coasters, like Thunderbird Holiday World has that barn you fly through, and you know there's elements of that. But I would agree those are probably 2 of the higher profile new rides I'm really anticipating. There's stuff coming down the pike. Obviously, you know, we can do a whole chat about Epic Universe, and I would say Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein experiment, is probably my #1 most anticipated new attraction for the year. It just, after seeing the animatronics and I've heard or read some reviews thus far that say it is a not necessarily physically intense, but mentally intense experience, which I'm really happy Universal went that route with this, because we've got a lot of the family-friendly Haunted Mansion level where it's spooky but fun spooky. So let's ratchet that up. Let's do like closer to HHN. So I'm really thrilled about that, and looking forward to seeing that at some point this year.
Kind of a classic Universal move. So you live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and you ran SkyCoaster for a time. What do you think about Extreme Skyflyer and many other SkyCoasters departing from parks? And I feel like since, you know, the Fun Spot parks added in their humongous SkyCoasters, there's been a deduction in the number of new SkyCoasters we've seen installed. Is there anything you might have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things at play. For one, when I ran SkyCoaster, that was one of it was I want to say a 5 or 6 year period when I was at Ride Entertainment. One of my favorite roles I ever had in the industry. I love operations. I love the industry in general, but getting out and interacting with operation teams, you know, on every continent but Antarctica, essentially, is where SkyCoasters were installed. And seeing the thrills that the ride brought, and really the operations of it. If you ask anyone that either is or was a site controller, they'll tell you it's a subculture within a subculture, because you go through all those hours of training, and then you're there to train other people in all the various positions on the flight crew. And it really is something special. You build a lot of camaraderie and relationships through that. And some of my best friends in the industry, I met through SkyCoaster, whether at the parks or when we would hold the safety symposiums. Which one thing that I changed when I ran SkyCoaster was I brought it. It used to be held in conjunction with other industry safety seminars, so it would be held in a ballroom or a classroom. And I thought it would be better to hold it at a park. So initially, we had to find parks that were open to doing this in January, because that's safety season. So we hold it at Fun Spot America in Kissimmee. We held it one year at Six Flags Magic Mountain. We held it at Lake Compounce. So we kind of moved around. The Lake Compounce one was when we moved it to the fall, because I'd opened up our horizons to be able. And I know like Lagoon has hosted it in Salt Lake City. It's a great way for all the site controllers to get together, and then also see other parks operations, because it's always good, I feel like, to get out of your park and see how other people do it. You know, you get ideas, you learn things, you come back. But to answer your question, I think there's a couple things at play. One, the ride is, you know, it was debuted in 1991. So you could do the math on that. You could see it was a great concept. No one had ever seen anything like it. Bill Kitchen, who is now, you know, runs US Thrill Rides. He invented the concept, and it exploded. And initially exploded at standalone sites in resort areas like Virginia Beach and Myrtle Beach and Panama City. You know, you name it, those type of places where it's ideal because it's a walk up, you pay your ticket, you fly it, and then you go do something else. And Kennywood in Pittsburgh in 1994, I believe, was the first gated park to put one in. And everyone was a naysayer and said, this is never going to work. You're charging X at the gate, and then you're going to charge X amount more to fly. Well, long story short, that first year, they were sold out of flights by 4 to 5 p.m. just about every day. And as soon as that metric got out, the Six Flags, the Paramount Parks, that was the group at the time, everyone was calling, and they wanted a SkyCoaster. And so between the years of 1995 and I would say 1997, you probably had 25 to 30 of these opening around the world. All 5 Paramount parks got them. Most of the legacy Six Flags parks got them. Every Cedar Fair park at the time got them. This was before they had bought Knott's Berry Farm. So Valley Fair Worlds, Cedar Point, and Dorney Park did not have one. That was the one missing link. But Worlds of Fun and Valley Fair and Cedar Point had them. So here we are now in 2025. The attraction is, you know, going on 30 something years since it was introduced, and it is a staff labor heavy attraction. So, I mean, when you have to look at numbers, and the metric is always the amount of money it takes to operate and maintain something. And then you factor that against the ridership. And that's ultimately why rides like Vortex at Kings Island get retired. You know, you look at it and ridership might be dropping and maintenance costs are going up. That's not a good combination. A ride like the Beast, maintenance costs are always going to keep going up, but the thing always has an hour to 2 hour wait. So, I mean, there's justification there, you know, that you can't touch a ride like that. It's a legacy. So that, in my opinion, but in any case, I think that's why you're seeing that, especially in the gated parks. I think the attraction still does well enough to continue on at standalone open gate family entertainment center settings. But time will tell. You know, it's it's over 30 years, and people's tastes change over the year. And there's only so many times you could do something. You know, you're relying on the next generation to carry on with that. But yeah, I'm a little sad to see Skyflyer go at KI. You know, it's one of the best operated ones in the industry. But, you know, if they have to remove a ride, I don't fault them for going that route, because it's not a ride that's included with general admission or season passes. So I feel like, you know, it's too bad, but, you know, probably the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent 2 seasons working in Action Zone, and the subculture within so true and so real. People that were on the Skyflyer crew, people that were site controllers, they loved it, and they wanted to do that, and they wanted to get other people to come in and do that. You know, come to Skyflyer. It's the most fun.
But I think most people don't realize that there are proximity switches on the winch drum that will stop the winch, you know, from overshooting. But otherwise, that ride is 100% manually operated in its design. There's not really a way around that. Everything is manually operated, from raising and lowering the scissors lift to, you know, the flight suit process to hooking flyers to the flight cables, all that. And, you know, it's such a hands-on experience. And it's really like one of those, you're engaging with the guests, you know, whereas you're checking restraints on the Beast, I'm sure is a fun job and there's camaraderie, but you're doing the same thing every 3 minutes. You know, it's just like quick, hit interval, get the train out, next train, let's go. Calling to the grouper, fill this seat, fill that seat, save this seat, save that seat. Whereas SkyCoaster, it's really every flight's a little different. And I think that's what people were driven towards.
So, Mark, is there any project that you may be working on now? And I don't know if you can speak about it or have any, obviously no specific details, but is there any project that your company is now working on that you're really excited about, and when might that see light of day?
Why, yes, actually. There is a 25-ish foot tall pirate standing in my shop right now. which I don't know many people could say that and not sound crazy, but
But does it have
so
a parrot next to it?
it does have a parrot, and the parrot talks. The parrot will be a carnival barker and invite people to play skee ball. And I'm not making this up. We're doing a really fun project with Playland's Castaway Cove, which is a family-owned park in Ocean City, New Jersey, not Ocean City, Maryland, the town that's about 20 miles north of Wildwood, 5 miles south of Atlantic City. Exit 30 off the Garden State Parkway. New Jersey people will enjoy that number because they identify everything by the exit number off the parkway. So back a few years ago, this park, they had a really tragic fire that burned their arcade building that was on the boardwalk. And it was a gorgeous old style, probably 100-year-old. It had a wooden lattice roof, just one of those buildings that wouldn't meet code today. They would never build it. It just got grandfathered. And with that fire, unfortunately, they had this iconic pirate ship on the roof that went with the fire. So we are recreating that pirate ship. But of course, when you do something a second time, it has to be plussed. So these figures are, they're huge. They're amazing looking. And they're going to stand behind a facade that's going to make them appear to be on a pirate ship that's going to be right at 60 feet in length. So this is a very large, sizable scenic project that is, really, it's what the guests of the park were missing it as they were putting up their new building, which is, of course, all concrete and, built like a rock. And it's got park offices up on the top floor. And so this thing's going to sit right up there, right off the boardwalk. And we're looking at a installation date sometime in April. So in time for the full-time summer season, it will be there greeting guests. And we're like beyond excited to see that thing installed up there. And the parrot kind of being a carnival barker, like Mr. Potato Head at Toy Story Mania, just calling out to people, come play my skee ball, come ride my coaster. But yeah, it's great for the boardwalk. Great. It'll do great for the park. We've got a lot of other projects, but unfortunately they're NDA clad. So they're not projects we can claim per se. We do a lot of subcontract work for partners of ours, bringing the ultimate vision to life. But yeah, so we're busy, which is great. And looking forward to looking at the next round of projects for later in 2025 into 26.
Mark, it's been a great conversation. We've loved having you on, and I'm sure that as soon as you get some other installations in, it'd be another great conversation to have you sometime later in the year. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, 3DX Scenic. Our website is 3dxscenic.com. We also have presence on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My email is markr@3dxscenic.com. And always feel free to reach out. Check us out on social. Check our website out. Feel free to reach out. And, to anyone in the industry that comes through Cincinnati, we're always open to giving shop tours. So reach out, and we'd love to show you around.
And that is Mark Rosenzweig, correct?
Yes, Mark Rosenzweig.
Did I get that in there correct?
Close enough.
All right. Well, okay. And I asked you a different question before we came on. So I will say, when you go out to eat, what name do you give them?
I don't, because I do it through Open Table.
You don't? Okay. You got me on that one too. All right.
Or Resi. Open Table or Resi, either or just through a restaurant's website. That's a really good, interesting thing you brought up, though, because it hasn't been a point of frustration for me for a long time. And that's because everything is done on the phone.
Good, bad, or indifferent?
Sure.
Well, before you head out, Mark, I just have one more question, if you don't mind. I think there's so many people in the world, and I think we have a good deal of them listening to us here today, that are like you and me, and we're just so young and so passionate about this industry from that age. Is there something you could say to them that you think would not only help them, but help the industry as a whole if everyone knew?
Yeah, I mean, a basic word of advice is don't panic, because you're very young and you have a lot of time. So don't feel like at the age of 18 or 22 or 28, you need to have life figured out, because, life expectancy is longer. You have a long way to go. I would say one area that people tend to not talk about or focus on are soft skills. And that's something that I feel like people really do need to work on, is that, being confident to go up to people in a social setting at a networking event and present yourself well and be professional, and don't be shy, and talk about your passion, in a non-weird way, let's say. Don't bug people out. You just want to, engage. And the other thing I will say is, get your hands dirty. That's a very important thing. And I work at a shop, so I say that literally, but, go get an hourly job at a park if you want to see if you really want to work in the industry. Even if your intent is to be an engineer, and everyone wants to design coasters, like that's the thing, but it's like, getting on an NFL football team, the odds of that, you have to kind of work through all the phases. So work at a park, be a sponge, be a goldfish, forget all the bad stuff, but be a sponge and absorb everything. Don't be afraid. Work in food and beverage, work in operations, work in park services. Get the pulse of a park, because once you have that, that's the information you need and the experience you need to take it to the next level. Leaders can't lead unless they've been led. They have to be led well as well. As you come in, Cleet, I'm sure, in your role, you're a sponge. You're learning new things every day, and you're trying to get, what is the next step there as well. So, I mean, you're doing exactly what I would do for someone trying to get in. The other thing, IAAPA, which is the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, I know I mentioned that acronym earlier. They have an ambassador program for their expo every November. I highly suggest anyone interested in getting in the industry and seeing the back of house of the industry. That's a great way. You volunteer and you can become an ambassador and actually work the expo. You get to see the floor, you get to see all the thing, and for anyone that has not been to IAAPA Expo, it's everything from sticks you fry corn dogs on to, $50 million hardware. So and everything in between. So everything needed to run a park. You come away, that is the most important week of the year. I think whether you're a seasoned veteran in the industry or someone coming into the industry, you definitely want to be there. Go to the networking events, go to the workshops, take advantage of it, and do it. That's really it. But don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Never be above anything, and work hard and let your passion drive and use integrity. That's a lot I just threw out there, but still all that. Good luck.
And as a foreshadowing, by the way, you brought up IAAPA. In a couple of weeks, I don't remember which day it is. I think it's either the last episode of March. We're having I believe it's the Senior Vice President or Executive Director of IAAPA North America, Michael Shelton, will be on.
Yeah, Michael's a great guy.
So, yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, Mark, thanks so much once again. We're so happy you were on. Truly a pleasure. I learned so much just through this conversation. And I can imagine the same is 100% true for our viewers. And thank you as well for making yourself accessible and giving back a little word of advice to the kids out there like me.
Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun, guys. Happy to do it again sometime.
Appreciate it.
All right. We'd love to have you back.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
All right. How about that? I think maybe my favorite, the coolest thing that just happened in that interview was that he leads, Mr. Rosenzweig leads, talking about how his company, how 3DX Scenic, they are a company of integrity. They want to provide the product that they pitch at the beginning. They don't want there to be any grayness, or they don't want to overpromise anything. And he said that that's great because it builds relationships, and you get to, watch a company build up their facilities. And then later he talks about Holiday World, and he talks about how they've done, the good gravy thing for them. And now they're doing these new archways for them. I think it's really cool to see someone who just tells it how it is and practices what they preach, so to speak.
Yeah, and I've been able to be down at their not their warehouse, but their production facility a time or two before, and it's amazing just to see what happens behind the facades of these great characters and these it's not statues or whatever they are, whatever the name of it is, but just to see the artwork and the engineering and the design and the level of detail that goes into it. And when you go and he's talking about the parrot that's heckling the people to come to play the games, you don't know what there's all the thought process and all the design work and things that we may just take for granted or walk by, and after a while you just kind of tune that stuff out. But at the same time, it builds into the story, and there's so much that goes into the background of that the average person walking by, yeah, it might be a themed element, but there's a lot of thought that goes into those things and a lot of detail.
Yeah, sure thing. So big thanks to Mark Rosenzweig for being on here today, and thanks to you for giving us a listen. And make sure you tell us down below what your favorite part of that interview was, and if there's any questions you have for Mr. Matthew Eckert from Holiday World for next week. I'm really excited
next
for that.
week. Yep. And we hope that everybody tunes in next week as well, and the following week after that. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and look us up on YouTube, where you hear your podcasts at, and we have a channel now on Rumble as well.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week, David. I'll see you then.
All right. We'll see you. Take care.